Welcome, everyone. We have the agenda in front of us. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Oh. Oh, does it? Okay. Oh, is that what you do? Okay, action. Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah. Okay. So action. Okay. Welcome, everyone. We have the agenda in front of us. Just do the land acknowledgement. The District of Sechelt is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Sechelt Nation. We respect the histories, language, and culture of the people of the Sechelt Nation, whose present continues to enrich this community. My family appreciates the Sechelts. Welcome. We have a call to order and declaration of any conflicts and the agenda as presented committee. Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. Councillor Rowe and Councillor Toth. All in favor of the agenda? Thank you. Let's then go into the delegations and proclamations, which is Cassidy Vander Ross, Nickel Brothers Canada. So I'm assuming you've gone through the drill. You'd sit up here, you turn on the mic. Oh, you have not? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So Jesse's going to speak first. Is that what you're saying? So whose laptop is that there? Is that in the way or anything? Okay. Yeah. No, I'm just making sure in case, unless you have notes or something, but you don't. Obviously, you're going to speak from the hip, I guess, Jesse. So the mic's on. You want to turn it on there? Yeah, the red light will go on the side of the mic. There you go. Okay.
Okay. We're good. Mayor, council, people, thanks for your time. My name is Jesse Stretch. Raised here on the Sunshine Coast, moved back in 2019. I can't tell you how much I support amending this bylaw, changing this bylaw in whatever way. A year ago, my mother-in-law purchased a home 2 doors down from me so she could be closer to her family from Kelowna. And we understood that it needed a updating, if you will. So once we dove into it, we realized that the building wasn't salvageable and it was going to go way beyond our budget. So we looked at modular homes, we looked at trailers, and then we looked at Nickel Brothers. And it was by far an affordable option as opposed to trying to build at a minimum of $400 a square foot. So we proceeded with that, and the roadblock of this one bylaw has been beyond frustrating. To know that if I live 15 minutes down the road in the regional district or Gibson's or almost anywhere else in BC, this wouldn't be a problem. We could just go ahead and affordably relocate this home. As it sits, if we're not allowed to do this at an affordable rate, she's going to have to sell the property at a loss. And that's just not going to contribute to the homelessness problem at all, because she's going to keep living with me. And I don't know how many of you guys live with your mother-in-law. It's not all that fun. Anyways, I'm going to turn it over to the experts, Cassidy, and thank you.
Is your mother-in-law here, Jesse?
Yeah, it's very
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us speak today. I have a presentation. Where do I see that to click through it?
It's coming.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah. It was emailed
So,
3 days ago.
what we may have to do then is, just because I thought that it would be quick.
Yeah, we can always
up.
flip through
we
that
can
if
go
that's
through that
easier
if
for
you like.
everyone.
The only weakness is, the public out there doesn't see it, but, might be important to us. Okay, okay,
Perfect.
great.
Okay, let's do
Yeah,
that then.
so if you just want to reference the
Sure.
pages when you speak to them, thanks.
Sure. So obviously, as Jesse alluded to, we're here to support the motion to change the bylaw and ideally get Heidi an affordable house within Seashelt. The current bylaw 40916 leaves room for interpretation, which results in inconsistencies between Seashelt and other jurisdictions, and also between Seashelt and the provincial and federal interpretations of the building code. You can see that on pages 1 through 4. We have the BC Building Code and Federal Building Code interpretations of how existing homes should be treated. We also have, after that, quotes from a federal study that was released last year regarding how older homes tend to have 440% more shear capacity in high seismic and high wind areas than homes built to current code, even at the highest seismic requirement. And then we also have quotes from BC Housing, the Municipal Insurance Association of BC, stating that they're not even sure if the bylaw as it currently is being enforced is able to be enforced like that legally, because it goes against the provisions in the building code for existing homes. And then, hold on, let me check what order they're in. And then we're jumping to just some technical information about the benefits of relocated homes and why we think that changing that bylaw could be a benefit to the community of Seashelt. So the graphic you see on page 5 or 6, it's a blue graph, is a graphic by Brenda Martins. She's a LEED certified expert on low carbon building. She's consulted on a number of developments in Canada and the States for LEED certified buildings. And this is a graphic that she likes to push for people in that the only way to actually reduce our carbon footprint is to stop building, to stop producing new materials, to stop using new materials. And that carbon, like energy efficiency from an operational standpoint, isn't really fixing anything. And we can see why on the next page, which is another graphic from the wonderful Brenda Martins, where we take a look at the differences between operational carbon and embodied carbon within a residential structure. So the majority of the carbon in a home and produced by a home is embodied carbon. So that is the carbon emissions that are produced during manufacturing, during import and export of those materials, during building, during maintenance, and also during demolition. And those are the main contributors to the carbon footprint of a residential home. We then have examples of a couple of homes on the next page and the page after that. So these homes each represent 109 trees and 80 trees respectively. They have 144,720 kilograms of embodied carbon and 104,000 kilograms of embodied carbon. To put that into perspective, the average home built pre-2016 will input 140 or output 140,000 kilograms of carbon in its entire lifetime. So you're doubling the carbon footprint of that home by demolishing it before its end of life, which is actually around 186 years. And that's outlined a bit more in depth in the report that I've provided there. And then again, a couple more homes on the next page. Again, just representing how large the carbon output of demolishing these homes actually is, how much it's increasing the carbon footprint. Each of those homes can be relocated for around $100 a square foot. So they're a hugely affordable housing option, especially in coastal areas like Seashelt, where building is ginormously expensive and bringing materials in is hugely expensive. I noticed that the report that was done by staff did reference federal and provincial initiatives that were leaning towards becoming more strict on operational carbon. And as someone who's been working with those teams, we're actually seeing them starting to focus more on embodied carbon now. And when we look at the graph on that next page, you can see why they're doing that. So we've had points or regulations that focus on operational carbon for a number of years now, and we've seen our emissions continue to go up. So 40% of our manufacturing emissions are new building materials. when you combine that with the amount of carbon that's being created through demolitions, especially in city centers like Vancouver, you have this graph where our emissions are continuing to increase despite the fact that we're trying to get better about operational carbon. So at this point, we are on route to emit 875 megatons annually by 2030. And our Canadian 2030 target is 524 megatons. And I think it's also important to note that the 524 megatons, we've actually agreed to that legally. So I'm not really sure what the ramifications are if we don't meet it. But it should be a priority to be trying to meet those. And again, this is a graphic that I've created that just kind of represents how, why we're in that cycle. So currently 1/3 of regional landfill content is C&D waste. Over 60 new trees are felled to build a new 2,000 square foot home. The construction industry generates 40% of our global materials production emissions, and the global demand for raw materials is expected to double by 2060. So new energy efficient buildings emit 48,000 to 65,000 kilograms of CO2e in their lifetimes, and they have an average carbon payback period of 168 years. So that's all of the new homes that are being built that are up to step code. They still have a carbon payback period of 168 years before that operational carbon actually starts to have an environmental benefit and outweighs the embodied carbon that was put into building that home. So 60% of homes are demolished at less than 83 years old. So at this point, by building new homes, even no matter how energy efficient they are, we are still continually going backwards in that carbon cycle. It's currently estimated that 25% of existing buildings in BC will be demolished by 2030. And we have 3,271 single-family dwellings demolished annually. That's just in Metro Vancouver. The demolition of an average 2,000 square foot building results in over 100,000 kilograms of material waste. So that's 100,000 kilograms of material waste, plus another roughly 75 to 80,000 kilograms of embodied carbon that is created every time you demolish a home. So the reason we'd like to see this bylaw changed is because it represents a huge opportunity for Sechelt to both limit or reduce their carbon footprint, to reduce waste going to regional landfills, and also to create affordable housing for residents at the same time. It's a very nice kind of cyclical thing that hits quite a few different goals in Sechelt's community plan. We have a few different recommendations that we are putting forward with that. We would like municipal policy that reinforces relocated homes designation as existing homes. And then to make that a little bit easier, we've also offered recommendations to create a streamlined building move-on permit. And in the sections of the report that highlight bylaws in other jurisdictions, you can see a number of them have a move-on permit already. We'd also like to implement a building reuse assessment form with all demolition applications, which would encourage people to reuse homes either through relocation or deconstruction rather than machine demolishing. And it would be a part of that, part of the process for them to get their demolition permit so that it's not just hoping that they have the awareness, it's actually giving them the awareness. We'd also like to see a refundable demolition deposit that will be refunded or to a certain amount depending on the amount of the home that's being demolished that is saved or salvaged. Early green removal permits, which I'll let you read about those more in detail, but again, they help streamline the process when you're dealing with relocated homes. And we'd also like to offer our assistance in creating educational materials to highlight the benefits of the use of low carbon concrete, just to complement all of the carbon reduction that relocated homes could create as well. Thank you.
That's the year end? Yeah,
Yes.
Thanks. Thanks for all those recommendations at the end. Next we have, I'm assuming then, Mr. Niehaus to speak. That was next on the agenda. And thanks for coming, Cassidy, and being here to answer any questions. Bear with me.
Ready to go? All right, thank you, Chairman Inkster. So this part of the building bylaw is basically unchanged. Well, it is unchanged since it was originally crafted in 2003. In the 2021, council did see fit to approve an amendment by which buildings that were undergoing renovations with a construction value of more than 50% of the assessed value of the building were required to have the life safety aspects of the building brought up to the current code. Buildings prior, we all know that buildings constructed prior to 1992 have asbestos and several other things in it, and disturbing building materials can liberate asbestos fibers. And of course, any work that's done in buildings like this we're required to look for a hazardous materials report and an abatement report to conform with work safe regulations before we allow our staff on site. As it is right now, the building bylaw does allow relocated buildings with some limitations. Some of the extractions from it and some of the items that Ms. Van der Roos touched on. The Seashell building, or this, I'm sorry, the SCRD building bylaw requires professional engineers report assessing the structural components of moved buildings and listing the life safety issues of moved buildings that must be brought up to current building code standards. The town of Gibson's building bylaw requires no person move a building within the town of Gibson's except where certified by a registered professional that the engineer by an engineer that the building, including its foundation, will substantially comply with the current version of the building code. The city of Delta, another example, requires a building permit to bring a relocated building into a health, safe, and bylaw compliant state. The city of Burnaby requires building permits for house moves into the city, providing that the house is not more than 30 years old. And I have a feeling that has to align with the requirements for seismic resistance that came into the building code in 2012. With me. The 2024 building code notes to Division A Part 1 with regards to relocated buildings and extraction is, it should be noted, however, that a change in occupancy may affect some requirements, loads, fire separations, dead and live loads, and relocation to an area with different wind, snow, and earthquake loads will require application of the current code requirements. The bulletin that recently came out in April from a Building Safety Standards Branch Bulletin 24-07 reflected this. The overarching premise, this is from the bulletin, the overarching premise of the application of the building code to a relocated building is retroactive application of the current building code is not required for a relocated building if the sole reason is due to its relocation. The correction of an unsafe condition, should one be found to exist, and as with any existing building relocated or not, the current building code is applicable to new alterations and additions that occur. However, in some circumstances, after sound analysis and good judgment by the designer and the local authorities, discretion may be need to apply to a current building code requirement for a realistic and practical approach to the code's intended objective. And here's just an example of a seismic system that you put into Part 9 houses, looking at the braced wall bands, and it has to do with the structure of the building, the wood structure itself resisting the forces that it would be subjected to in high winds and earthquakes. Another method in which we look to have buildings comply with the safety requirements for lateral loading are things like this that are attachments between the wall assemblies and the foundation. And this is an HSS5 system where you typically would have a double stud, which is fastened to it and then anchored in by a 5/8 anchor bolt into the foundation. And this would be designed by a structural engineer. Older buildings have 3/8 plywood sheathing or diagonal shiplap as the exterior sheathing. 3/8 plywood does not offer very much in the way of lateral resistance, but shiplap is better, especially if you have cross bracing within the stud cavities. And when I was a very young man, I was one of those guys putting those in. Relocated buildings from one jurisdiction or another aren't really a cut and paste operation as what the code has articulated in the notes earlier. Taking a house from Ladner, which is pretty well at sea level and has a snow load requirement of 1.3 kPa for the roof, and moving it to Squamish, for example, where it has a snow load requirement of 2.8 kPa, would require a structural upgrade to the roof assembly in order for the building to be safe to use. In areas with no recorded earthquakes, lateral resistance for seismic consideration simply won't apply. If you compare the Merritt, which has a peak ground velocity of 0.16 to Victoria, which has a peak ground velocity of 0.834, you can see that there are some dissimilarities in the very design of the buildings that maybe need to be accounted for. 49% of the housing in Canada was constructed prior to 1980 with poorly performing windows, wall and ceiling assemblies. The push for action on climate change has sparked discussion on what to do about old housing stock and how to go about achieving improvements. The logical place to consider such upgrades is during an addition or renovation. In 2019, the province held several engagement sessions to develop the existing buildings renewal strategy summary of December of 2021. Through the Clean BC plan, the province committed to developing an energy efficiency code for existing buildings, intending to bring modern standards for efficiency and comfort. This took a broader approach, embracing overall climate resiliency, dealing with the climate change challenges of flooding, drought and water conservation, wildfire, indoor air quality, overheating, and energy efficiency. Just recently, proposed changes to the 2025 National Building Code dealing with upgrades to existing buildings was sent out for public review and comment. Hopefully a summary of this will be available soon. The triggers of these upgrades was kind of the crux of the matter. When would we be looking for those? Right now, those are merely voluntarily applied by the owner themselves, desiring to do things like swap out windows for more efficient and better performing windows or upgrading insulation. But we expect that this is either going to be in the body of the code in the future, or it will be a standalone code. Initially, we expected these changes to come forward, some of them in the 2024 code, but it has not at this time. I think with the province's small-scale multi-unit housing initiative in urban containment areas, there will be increased pressure to move houses into the jurisdiction or into jurisdictions with more permissive bylaws regarding relocated housing. If you're looking for a recommendation from me, I believe we should redo Part 16 to reflect the limitations of the Building Act and remove things that could be determined to be ultra vires, such as the 16.12F, requiring a building to have its windows swapped out, upgraded insulation and that. The gist of what the code is saying in 2024 and the bulletin is that you should be looking at the safety improvements required as a result of moving it into your jurisdiction. I think we should redo Part 16 to reflect the limitations of the Building Act and the objectives of this council. Any questions? Did I bore you?
Thanks. Committee, any questions of Mr. Niehaus? Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks. I think what I'm hearing is Director our chief building Mr.
Building official.
official, is that the code recommendations that you're suggesting actually go to the heart of what the amendment that Councillor Toth is proposed bringing forward. So, I mean, stepping back from it, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of pressure from the province for the municipality to add housing. I think this is a fabulous opportunity to enable more houses to be brought to, you know, at an affordable level. Because it's just not building extra housing, it's affordable housing. And with the projects that we're approving, there's no guarantee that they are affordable. Affordable for residents. So I am certainly in support of amending our own bylaw as per Councillor Toth's suggestion coming up. Thanks.
Thanks. Any other questions for the presentation from Mr. Niehaus? Okay. Did you have any questions over here? Is that what you're saying? No? Yeah, I didn't see one, so. Okay, thanks. And I guess you can go somewhere else. There's no space over there anymore.
Unless somebody wants this chair,
Yeah.
I'm okay here.
You can stay there because I was going to move you, but it's changed. So you might as well stay there. I guess you're on the hot seat for the whole meeting.
Oh, look, I got a chair.
Yeah, there you are. But obviously the committee knows this is for deliberation of council continuing, but it's good to have the building official here. And I will say with this issue that's in front of us, and it's good to see, I was hoping to see it sooner, honestly, but council's been talking, a number of council members have been talking about this issue for a number of months since it's come forward. And I think the concern over trying to help people relocate homes and the fact that council wants to look for solutions has in a sense encouraged and led to Councillor Toth bringing forward a notice of motion, which is quite helpful to deal with this issue. So just wanted to let those concerned and or the public know that we've been thinking about this for a few months since it came in front of us and or emails, etc. So let's then move forward, as far as I know, to 5.2 then, the notice of motion presented by Councillor Toth. And Councillor Toth, did you want to introduce this? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I actually wanted to highlight something that our chief building official said there at the end of his remarks, in that, you know, looking to meet the objectives of this council, I think is an interesting point, because we haven't really had a conversation in a public setting about our objectives when it comes to step code, building design, relocated dwellings, things like that. So there's a lot to the topic of today's meeting, but I think it's a really important one for us. Nobody here needs me to point out that we're in the middle of a affordable housing crisis. So much of the history of this community was built on relocated dwellings, whether they were cabins or bunkies or, you know, relocated full-size homes. The step code is making new home construction harder and more expensive every day. But a relocated dwelling does have that opportunity to provide affordable and reasonable housing. We see the Sechelt Nation taking advantage of this in bringing in 10 homes from Port Moody, saved from demolition. And once that's complete, that's going to provide housing to 20 families that were in precarious situations before. Homes that a person would want to move still need to be decent homes. No one's going to want to pay the costs to move a piece of junk. And professionals that do this work every day, like Nickel Brothers, aren't going to be willing to move a piece of junk either. So I put this motion forward before knowing that there was the staff report coming on this subject. So it's probably a little bit more specific than it would have been if I'd had a chance to see the staff report ahead of time. And really all I'm looking for is support from council for us to maybe swing the pendulum a little bit closer to affordability than we currently have in place. And I appreciate the comments from the chief building official that indicate there are a lot of places where we can possibly move on. So I do have my motion here on page 4 of the agenda package. I'd like to loosen it up just a little bit when I go to make it, in that the first bulletin or the first bullet point there, rather than what's on page 4, I'd like to say altering language in section 16 to more readily facilitate relocated dwellings in the district of Sechelt. And then the other two recommendations that are on the page here would be as presented.
Okay, so you've basically changed the first bullet fairly clearly. You're referring to that.
I've made it, I've opened it up a little bit more
Okay.
so that our staff can come forward to us with the
Okay.
recommendations that make the most sense to them.
And I'm assuming, Counselor Toth, that that's most likely in reference to the presentations that have been made.
Yeah.
Sort of quick on your feet there to make changes to reflect what's been given to us. Thank you. Is that change of the first bullet clear to staff that's making the notations? Okay. Sure.
I'll forward it to you. Yeah.
Okay, if it's not clear to staff, but they'll be forwarded that, is it clear to the committee members that what Counselor Toth has made changes to? Clear? Just looking around? Clear? Yeah, okay. So are you then introducing the three then? Is that what you're doing?
I
And
would
ask for
like
a
to make
seconder?
the motion on those 3 bullets. Thank you.
Okay, great. Second, any discussion of the information and the 3 bullets presented concisely by Counselor Toth? Okay. All in favor? Yes? Yeah.
Just, I would like to make sure, and I support this, very much. I'm
Mhm.
glad to see the loosening or the broadening perhaps of, bullet 1. But let's also involve the rest of the impacted organizations in addition to the community associations. I think builders will support this. I imagine the Chamber of Commerce, SDBA and so on. So that's more about a promotional aspect to it than the implicit direction we're giving to staff. But we need housing and some of these improvements, I guess it's fair to say it's nice to have triple pane windows or stronger earthquake protection, but we need housing first. And I'm relying on buyers to understand what they're buying and what they're getting. So I do support it.
Okay, so when you said that, were you speaking to the motion presented in front of? us?
I was speaking to the motion in the sense that I don't really think we need to be more explicit, but the last piece, that the bylaw amendment be forwarded to community associations, I'm happy to support that and
Okay.
recognize that we will put it out to other people as well.
Okay, now that was included, obviously understood within the information you presented as your motion, correct? Okay, that was your intention. Okay, so is that, that's satisfactory?
As
Okay.
long as everybody understands, we should put it out far and wide.
Okay,
But my main point is we don't have a a lot of people don't have the luxury of getting the best or the most modern, but we sure need to get them some housing.
yeah, I think that this committee and the council, when we're all here, certainly represents that thought. Okay, the motion's in front of us. All in favor? Thank you. Great, thanks. Look at the next items on the agenda. Just the first quarter report. I don't know if the guests that are here today want to stay for that. It's really exciting, the financial piece. And as you leave, thanks for being patient. Sometimes government moves slower than you would have wished, but we hope that this helps you out. And I wanted to thank Cassidy as you leave for I never thought when you came to us and spoke to us that you would take I thought you'd talk about the affordability aspect and why we should move homes to make it more affordable. You talked about the carbon footprint, which is really important to me and a number of other environmentally concerned individuals in the district of Sechelt. And you talked about the fact that the recyclable material and/or demolished homes most likely have to go either to cellular soils or up to our dump, which is nearing capacity. So those are both strong arguments that I didn't think you'd present, but I thank you for reminding us of both those aspects. Thanks for coming. Okay, committee, we have the first quarter reports that were presented to us. Any questions? Let's make a motion though to accept the reports as presented first, and then we'll go through them with questions. Councillor Rowe, Councillor Shepherd, all in favor of reception of that first quarter reports? Thank you. Thanks, committee. Any questions on the first quarter reports? I'm stalling committee as I look through the report again, wondering if anybody has any questions. I guess that speaks to staff's clarity of report when there's not many questions. Looking around again, not seeing any questions. Okay, there is a question. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. In here, we're referencing a few things. This is a report, I believe, to the end of March. So I just wanted to be clear. For example, on page 17, under the staff work regarding the water technical group, that we're going to get a presentation that's tentatively planned for Q2, which takes us to the end of June. I guess I'd like some clarity on when are we actually going to hear what's going on in all the work that is apparently being undertaken. Thank you.
That threw me to staff then, obviously. And which staff member will be answering that question then on the report?
Believe that was me, and I was just catching up on page numbers.
Sure.
So the water technical group has not met recently. We've communicated via email indicating that SCRD's present priority was regarding meeting provincial and Sechelt Nation requests for EFN and siphons. And the Sechelt Nation would like to spend some time enhancing their technical review, legal review of the reservoir. And so those three projects have risen to the surface over the evaluation of all the projects on the books. And while we continue to speak regularly, the group itself has not met in roughly 6 weeks or so. So I don't have a date at this point for future presentation to this council or all elected officials as a whole, but we'll endeavor to look into that further and report back when I can.
Okay,
you.
thanks. Thanks, Mr. Allen. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, committee, I will move then to the next item on the agenda, which is number 6, adjournment. Councillor Toth moving, Councillor Rowe seconding, all in favor. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, thanks, everybody.